Alright, so skill fruits and these epic skill fruits with the 55 CT and 150 power from the original game, pre-Sakurajima. It's mostly these laser skills. We have the Dragon Meteor, the Solar Blast and stuff like that is sort of like the laser skills. And then we have Rock Lance. I guess an exception would be like the Blizzard Spike, but that isn't one of those 150 power. That's a little bit less and a little bit less CT as well. So it's comparing these like Dragon Meteor and Fireball to something like Flare Storm, comparing Lightning Bolt to Airblade and Lightning Streak, and just Rock Lance with Sand Tornado to start, just to show like what it is that really makes these skills bad and other skills actually good. So it's a little bit about their CT, about the overall power that they have, and then also the animation time has a big factor as well. So just starting by comparing quickly Lightning Bolt and Airblade and Lightning Streak, you can see that Lightning Bolt deals less damage than the other two skills in total, and it also has almost double the cooldown. So this cooldown is also adjusted for like the average loop of 12 seconds to use 3 skills plus 1 basic attack most of the time with whatever skills you choose. Same thing with Fireball here. Dragon Meteor was mostly included just to show that long animation time again, compared to something like just sending out Airblade or Lightning Streak. So Fireball, a little bit more damage, but also almost twice the CT of something like Flare Storm. But it isn't a huge animation time. It's not like the laser skills or Dragon Meteor. It's a pretty decent skill Firebolt compared to the others, but it's still not great. And then we have something like Rock Lance, which is just terrible. It deals this exact same amount of damage as something like a Sand Tornado, but again with almost double the cooldown. So just in terms of power, they feel very weak. Then we have this animation time that I was mentioning, that if you use like these long animation skills, I just took 3 pretty long animation skills, not super long, like Fireball is still pretty fast and Thunder Rain isn't super long either. There are longer animation skills like Sand Twister, but this loop was around 18 seconds to do this amount of damage. And then if you swap to something like Airblade and Lightning Streak and just a Flare Storm, like pretty short animation skills, you get these 9-second loops as well. And there's also no added basic CT skills. So the basic CT skills are these skills that are used when everything is on cooldown, like the basic Ignis Blast and Dragon Cannon or whatever. And they don't get used if the CT of the 3 skills you choose is long enough. And that's pretty important because they tend to add like 4 seconds of the PAL just standing still. So this is another example of this loop. Just using these 3 very quick attacks spamming after each other in 9 seconds is actually 61 DPS. In terms of just raw power, we're not including like super effective stuff right now. But it's just 61 DPS when you're doing it like this. And then if you swap to something with the high power skills, so you have a little bit more power, but we are again looking at the animation times. You get this Lightning Bolt, the Pal Blast, and again the Fireball isn't actually a huge animation time. It would be worse if you used something like Sand Twister or Solar Blast or something like that, but it's still, and then you get that little added skill due to long CT time and then 4 seconds walk around time. So it's less than half the terms of DPS because the loop is just so long. So it's very important to consider these animation times as well. And if you're mixing a lot of different CTs, like while you're using Pile Blast, something like Holy Burst could come off cooldown and then it's just heavily delayed instead. So the animation times are a big factor as well. And these cool looking skills like the Epic Fruits tend to have a lot longer animation times. There's the big wind up and then there's the actual skill itself. So from just comparing a couple of different loops, it will depend on like what skills you're using, of course. It looks like it's around 20% DPS loss to just add this sort of basic skill. So something like Serenity, if you add Serenity and that manages to remove that basic skill being used, it can be a lot of damage. So here are like 3 different loops being used with and without Serenity. Loop 1, we have Blast Cannon, Beam Slicer, Holy Burst, and with and without Serenity, this Bog Blast will be used in between the loop. So you will get this slightly longer loop of 15 seconds. And that's with Serenity on one pal and without Serenity on the other. So Serenity doesn't matter here. The loop will be exactly the same if using these 3 skills. It doesn't matter, so then you might as well go Ferocious for 10% more attack power. But that isn't always true. It will depend on what 3 skills you are using. Like if it adds 0 to 3 Bog Blasts between. If you're using like these 60 CT skills. So then we have a second loop using Holy Burst, Airblade, Lightning Streak. And here it does matter if you're using Serenity or not. So this pal is without Serenity. So it's still going to be this 15-second loop with the Bog Blast in between the loop. So a little bit of a DPS loss, not worth sacrificing the shorter animation times and stuff. It's mostly Beam Slicer having a little bit longer CT that makes him not spam those 3 in a loop. But you can see it does add this Bog Blast in between, which as mentioned, it seems to add this 4 seconds of walking around time when the pal gets Amnesia. And this is the Serenity Noclam using the same 3 skills, just Airblade, Holy Burst, Lightning Streak, and you'll see no Bog Blast. So all of a sudden it's down to being like 8.5 seconds instead of these 15-second loops. You can see it's just going over and over and over. So even if Beam Slicer and Blast Cannon have more power, it will do a lot more DPS. And as mentioned before, this is without super effective included. This is just to show these animation times. We have Blast Cannon and Beam Slicer being super effective against Victor. It might be more DPS anyway, so that's something to look at after all. So all this stuff, like together, I've tried to put it all on the website. You will have this general idea. This is just the top 20 skill fruits for each of the different hitboxes. You'll have something like Björn's hitbox, something like Victor's hitbox with the big wings sticking out, taking a lot of damage. And then you have raid bosses, which work a little bit differently just because of how CT works. Party pals have a way shorter CT than raid pals, which means that these like longer CT skills and shorter CT skills, they will have a little bit different DPS in the loops themselves. How they work. So if you want to go a little bit more in-depth when you're looking at these skills and how they get used, we got these complete tables down here, hidden behind these little things. So we got the medium hitbox, large hitbox, and then the Xenolore kind of hitbox. You'll see that the CT will be a little bit different. Comparing these, we got Acid Rain here having a CT of 12, because that's just a basic loop. It's actually closer to probably like 6 or something. So these 2 CT skills will be set to 12 just for the loop. So if we take a look at this Björn test, for example, against a medium hitbox, you can compare just like the hit power is what you're probably interested in. So Rock Burst melee is something a little bit different when the pal is standing right next to the boss. Same thing with Volcanic Rain. This one is very inconsistent. This is not something you can really plan for probably. But what you want to be looking at is this hit power a little bit more than just the DPS, because depending on the loop, you're either going to have a cooldown of like 8.5 as mentioned, or you're going to be going up to 12 or 15. It really depends on the animation time of the skills. So you probably just want to look at hit power, and if the pal does add that Bog Blast or Dark Cannon or whatever it decides to add as its basic filler skill, which will add 4 seconds to the loops. The overall goal when you're choosing your skills is to get skills with a high hit power that won't give you this like numerable Bog Blaster stuff being used in between skills. Sometimes it is good. You can do like Rock Burst, Holy Burst, Flame Funnel, and then you are gonna get this Bog Blast being used in between. So it's just something you have to try out and sort of puzzle together depending on what boss you're fighting. So then you can use these different hitbox size to compare, and then you would have to take the power times 1.5 for super effective, or the DPS times 1.5 to get a fair comparison there. And then these are just the skill fruits as mentioned. You got the melee Rock Burst showing here. And then I did the same thing with these exclusive skills that I've tested. So it's the same thing with the hitboxes. And then we have these breeding exclusive skills like Dark Wisp as well, doing a lot of damage. But I decided to just do a pretty basic table for the breeding exclusive skills. So that's it for this part. I hope you learned why some of these epic fruits are very bad and why some of the common, the uncommon and rare, like the green and blue fruits, are actually oftentimes a lot better. So thanks for watching.